Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Dr. Digital, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 must-tames in Ark Survival Ascended. Now, this list hasn't really changed much from Survival Evolved. Actually, I don't think it's really changed at all, because these creatures specifically, again, on the island, these are just the best creatures to either get around, gather resources, or to just, for any combat purposes. So I guess let's just get started. And number 10 is going to be the Mammoth. Now, the Mammoth is extremely useful in many different ways. The first way the Mammoth is useful is the fact that it can gather thatch, berries, and wood. So if you go ahead and you press space, you will do a stomp attack, which gets a bunch of wood. And then if you go ahead and left click, you'll gather more thatch. So you can alternate between gathering a bunch of thatch or a bunch of wood. Now, one of the craziest things that the Mammoth has is that if you look in its inventory here, the stack of wood weighs 12.5. If I drag this into my own, it's 50. So you can hold so much more wood in this guy's inventory. You can farm and farm and farm for days, and this guy will just keep holding and grabbing all the wood. It's incredibly useful, and it's definitely my draw towards the Mammoth, but the Mammoth does have some other utility as well. So if you press C, you do a roar. Now this roar applies the intimidating buff, I think is what it's called, and it lowers the amount of damage output that your enemies can deal by 25% or something like that. It's pretty solid, and it does in fact work against bosses. Now, the fact that it works against bosses is pretty crazy. It's definitely like one of the coolest things that you can do with the Mammoth. And then you can also hop on the passenger seat here, like this, if I can get it to work here, or drum platform. Then you left click, and then you start this whole mini game, right? And there you go, you see the music's playing. So you start this kind of like beat, and as long as you keep refreshing this beat, you look at the bottom right hand side there, there's the Ready for War buff. And the Ready for War buff gives extra stamina regen, and it makes it so you cannot get UD feared by enemies, which is honestly super nice. And there's a funny little thing that the Mammoth can do as well. You could go up to the water. I forget exactly what level it is. Maybe I gotta go further in. There it is. Yeah. You can shoot water. Don't know what purpose that serves, but you can also pick up small creatures with right click, which is also relatively nice. And yeah, that's gonna cover for the Mammoth. So in summary, great at carrying wood, high weight stat, and offers just some good buffs for boss fights or just general PvP or combat. Now, this is one that I've put on the list that a lot of people don't, and I don't quite understand why, because people always put Argentavis at the top position, which I have also done, but they don't seem to put Ankylosaurus that highly up, and I don't understand why, because you kind of pair the Argentavis with the Anky. Like, you get an Argy, and the next thing you tame is an Anky, right? And the reason this creature is so good is because it does two things. Gathers a decent amount of flint, and it gathers a lot of metal. This is going to be your best source of metal that you're going to have until Genesis comes out. So this one's really like sweet and simple. You get flint, you get metal. The Anky, if you look here, has a massive weight reduction on metal, insanely useful. So you pair this with an RG, pick up the Anky, and you can go on these crazy big metal runs and bringing back thousands and thousands of metal to base. Now, for our next creature we're going to be talking about, we are going to be covering the Daedon, which is also another one I don't see on the list. Which is very odd because I see the Yudi on the list all the time, but I do not see the Daedon. Now, granted, this is kind of like my list from, thousands of hours of playing the game and my own opinion, plus kind of what has gotten me and my tribes through the game every time we've, played PvP or PvE. And that's why I think the Daedon is incredibly useful. It's more useful on official than it is on unofficial, and that is because the Daedon has other uses other than just killing bosses. They're not killing them necessarily, but being a support to your army, right? You can heal your army mid-battle, which is super useful. But on official, it has a very good use case, which is to heal baby dinos. Now, if you lack it, let's say you're breeding a bunch of gigas, and you're waiting for somebody to do a meat run, and you don't really have that much meat left. You could go ahead and you could use the Daedon to heal your gigas. You could use when, Scorcher comes out, you could use the Daedon to also heal up your wyverns if you run out of wyvern milk. There's a bunch of things that the Daedon can do with its healing factor that is not only for boss fights, is what I'm trying to say. So I think the Daedon is definitely, you use it to do the end game content of this, which is bosses. You use it for the tech cave. You use Daedons for everything relating to progressing yourself really far in the game. And on top of that, it helps you breed. So I think it's definitely one of the better creatures in the game. So if you guys need help with breeding, or you just need something to heal your mounts when you're doing bosses, I would definitely suggest the Daedon. Alright, so the next dino we're going to be talking about is the Basilosaurus. Now the Basilosaurus is honestly one of the only creatures I would suggest taming for the underwater. Obviously I would suggest the anglerfish and the manta. Manta for, travel purposes, and then anglerfish because it gathers an insane amount of pearls, sorry. But the Basilosaurus has so many great qualities. Now, the general reason that people don't like the ocean is for two main reasons. Either they get grabbed by a Tuso and they don't know what to do, and they freak out and their tame dies, or they get stunned by jellyfish or eels and they don't know what to do and they freak out and die, right? So the Basilo has the capability of not getting shocked or not getting grabbed by the Tuso. The Basilosaurus also generates oil. It heals rapidly when it surfaces, and it has a great weight pool with decent damage. It is definitely the only creature you really want to be using for any content in the ocean. You use it for the caves. You can use it to kill the alphas, to get your tributes. It's a really good tame. And hey, who doesn't like free oil, right? All right, the next creature we're going to be covering is going to be the Uranus. Now, the Uranus is kind of at the same spot as the Daedon, where the Udi is kind of more of a just support creature. Now, you can use this for, again, more than just boss fights. You can use the Uranus to run around, and you can fear stuff away from you if you're trying to tame something, for example, or you could buff your ally tames so they don't die as easily, or you could just use the baryonic, or sorry, not the baryonics. See, I'm seeing the name through the Udi. Or you could use the Uranus for just general travel, right? It's faster than a Rex, which is really nice, and it also has a pretty good stamina pool compared to the Rex. So you could definitely use this guy to run around a lot more than you would be able to a Rex. And the Uranus's damage is very, very similar to the Rex. So it's pretty good. Now, I'm not really going to cover the Udi all that much because I feel like most people know what the Udi does. Buffs creatures, has good damage, health, stam. So yeah, you can use it to travel around, and it's honestly the most pivotal point to any boss fight or any raid. You always want to have a Uranus for base defense, for raiding, for bosses. It is just that useful. And on top of that, the Uranus is also capable of making exceptional kibble, I think, or augmented extraordinary kibble. You know what? I'm gonna leave that in because I just made a fool of myself. Extraordinary kibble. That's the one you want, and that's the one it makes. All right, the next creature we're going to talk about here is going to be the Baryonyx. Now, the Baryonyx is kind of weird, and you might be thinking it's odd putting it, above the Udi and Mammoth. And the reason I have it above there is because what creature are you going to use to get the artifacts to fight the bosses, right? And it's got to be the Baryonyx. The Baryonyx is fast. Baryonyx has good damage. If it eats fish, it heals an absurd amount. And on top of that, if we go in the water here, it is a fast swimmer with a stun attack. The creatures in the caves, and you can kind of weasel your way past everything, which is honestly really, really useful. So yeah, I would definitely suggest using the Baryonyx as a travel mount and as well for caves. All right, now we're getting to the really good, useful, or just strong tames. So the first one we're going to be covering here is going to be the Rex. Now the Rex, again, not that fast. It does have an improved turning radius, which is all thanks to the TLC it received a couple years ago. And what general use does the Rex have? Now the Rex is, again, very strong. So if you're running around on a Rex, there's nothing really on the island that can kill you. So you're safe on the Rex. So you can run around on the Rex, and it gathers an absurd amount of meat, an absurd amount of hide, and I'd say out of almost every resource in the game, hide is one of the resources you need the most, and the Rex gathers an abundance of it. Now, you could also kind of swap out the Giga for the same role, but the Giga is a lot harder for most tribes to obtain. So you can meat run, get a bunch of meat, a bunch of hide, feed your babies, all your carnivore babies, and it has the additional bonus of being good for just about every boss fight in the game. Alright guys, so the next creature we're going to be talking about here is the Therizino. Now, this might seem a little bit odd, right? I have the Therizino above the Rex when the Rex is good for all boss fights, and the Therizino is also good for all the boss fights, but its general use is mainly for specifically the dragon fight because it's a herbivore. But let me explain to you why I think the Therizino deserves to be up. Now, the Therizino has a lot of things going for it, and I'm just going to go and show you right now. You press C on a bush, you get berries. You right click a bush, you get fiber. You left click a tree, you get wood. Right click a tree, you get wood and thatch, right? So already, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 different resources. Pretty solid, right? Let's go ahead and put some levels into it. Then we're gonna hold E, and then we're gonna press the little sickle here, and then you can see the different harvesting levels. So there's delicate harvesting and power harvesting. Now power harvesting is going to be for wood, meat, hide, prime meat, and then rare mushrooms. And then the delicate harvesting is going to be for fiber, thatch. I think berries also go in power, and then rare flowers go in here as well. So you can gather rare flowers, rare mushrooms, wood, meat, hide, fiber, thatch, berries. It doesn't end, right? The Therizino you can use not only to do the hardest boss on the island, and one of the hardest bosses in just general on, across all the maps, but it is an insanely good resource gatherer. It's like a multi-tool. It's like a Swiss Army knife, but in a creature, which for me, I find insanely valuable. So I would definitely suggest getting yourself a Therizino. And let's move on to number 2, who is over there right now. All right, guys, the next creature we're going to be talking about is the newest addition to the island. Again. Okay, tap number 3. The Rhinonatha, the newest addition to the island. This creature, when they designed it, honestly, I could put it before or after the RG. This creature is insane. Let's talk about one of the craziest things it can do right off rip. You can fly, and you can swim. That's right. You can fly and you can swim, and it's not even a slow swimmer. And then you could just get straight out of the water just like that. And then you could just dive right back in. Now, also, if you give it resin, you can shoot resin at it, at creatures like bullets. You can lob resin bombs, which, encase them in resin and stop them from moving temporarily. You can, let's go up to the Rex here. You can carry creatures that even the Quetzal cannot carry. If I can get this to work properly. There you go. You can carry creatures that the Quetzal can't even carry, which is absurd. That is so crazy to me. I don't know why they thought it would be a good idea to make it so it could carry everything, but it can carry everything. You could go like this. You can taunt creatures. It is just an absurd creature. I don't even know how to, you know, prove that it's good. It just feels so obvious, right? Also, it has multi-directional flight like a Tapehara, because, you know, the stuff that it had already wasn't good enough. Now, I have the Argentavis above the Rhinoanatha because it serves some, like, kind of similar purposes. It's because you kind of want to use the Rhinoanatha to transport creatures, and it has a pretty good weight pool. So a Rhinoanatha is kind of like an endgame Argentavis, just with a bunch of additional stuff. But the reason I have the RG a little bit higher is because of how easy the RG is to get. You can pick up Dodix, you can pick up Ankies like I mentioned earlier to gather an abundance of resources, or you could use it as just like a mule, right? You can put a bunch of weight on the RG and you can fly it everywhere on the map, and you could basically transport a whole base on some of these RGs with really high weight stats. Now, another really cool thing about the RG is it has a weight reduction on metal, crystal, obsidian, stone. It has a weight reduction on basically all the resources you find on the top of mountains, which is insanely useful. On top of that, its saddle also acts like I don't understand this guy. He just keeps flying away. Anyways, that is so odd. But his saddle also works like a smithy. So if, you know, you open it up, you can craft everything with metal. So you could, you know, bring metal pickaxes with you, and then you could repair them straight in its inventory, which is super useful. And if your RG's health is getting low, you could go ahead, kill a creature, harvest their corpse, and the Argentavis gets stamina regen and increased health regen from consuming corpses. He really goes out of his way to help others, you know? What a nice guy. Anyways, definitely get yourself an Argentavis. It's super powerful, super strong, gathers tons of resources. It helps you, gather a ton of resources. And it's honestly just the best general purpose creature in the game. And there you go. That's my top 10. I know this video was a little bit long. I'm going to try and trim it down as anywhere I can. And I'm missing so many dinos. They just ran out. But yeah. If you guys have any suggestions of your own, if you feel like certain creatures should have made the cut or shouldn't have made the cut, definitely let me know in the comments. And it's, you know, useful because other people can see some other creatures that people think are pretty good as well in the comments. Because there's not only 10 creatures in the game that are useful, there's plenty more. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.